Hello everybody and welcome to Burley's World. I wanted to give you guys just a quick health update. I went to my cardiologist and it's been about a year since I've seen him. And some things good, some things not so great. Um, I mentioned this a little bit in my first video. Got some health problems, some heart problems. And a lot of it, not all of it, but some of it stemmed from high blood pressure that had gone untreated for a number of years. I had always gone in and had my blood pressure taken in any regular doctor's visit, and it always seemed like my blood pressure was high. They'd make a mention of it, but I always thought it was, hey, I've been having a stressful day, or I had drank too much coffee, and I just figured it was temporary. I didn't take it that serious, and I didn't really monitor it other than that. And over time, that I did not even realize. I knew that having high blood pressure wasn't good for you, but since I wasn't monitoring it regularly, I didn't realize that it was really a chronic situation for me. And I also didn't realize the strain it puts on your heart. I just didn't know the facts. So, public service announcement from Burley: if you've got high blood pressure, over time it can do damage to your heart, and it can be a source of strokes and heart failure. Um, my dad had a massive stroke at the age of 69. Um, so when I realized that my heart wasn't doing well, my high blood pressure was out of control, obviously I had to take things a little bit more serious. So I tightened up my diet and got some pretty good results from doing that in a relatively short amount of time. Over the course of a few months, I had dropped my cholesterol, my bad cholesterol, by about 50%. So the doctors were pleased. Some of it was through diet, some of it was through some nutritional supplementation. They put me on a statin initially, and statins aren't great for everybody. Let me just put it that way. I don't want to get into a huge debate about pharmaceuticals, but these nearly put me in the hospital, actually. Had I stayed on them any longer than the 3 weeks I was on them, I was declining every day I had taken them, until I basically could barely get out of bed. And they said, had I stayed on them much longer, I could have gone into kidney failure. So, just a word to the wise: know that that is a possibility. I'm not saying it would happen or it will happen. Just be educated on the drugs that your doctors are putting you on. Sometimes they don't all know all of the ins and outs of those. They've just been prepped by a drug rep and by the schooling that they've had, which sometimes is outdated 5 years into their practice or 10 years into their practice. So they need to keep updating themselves on those things. Now, my doctor didn't do anything wrong per se, as far as didn't do anything that another doctor would not have. So I'm not putting the blame on her. That's standard practice. People have high blood pressure, or they put them on blood pressure meds, which my doctor did. They adjusted those a couple of times to get a little bit better result. Um, the the good side of that is, when I went in for my appointment, my blood pressure is now under control. I am still on meds. Maybe eventually, if I don't know if I'll ever get off of them. Maybe if I take better care of myself, maybe I can. Um, my cardiologist is being positive minded that that's a possibility. He thinks I need to drop some weight. Now, I'm not an overweight person. Um, However, when the doctors see my weight versus my height, uh, a little alarm goes off for their BMI monitor. I don't know if you're familiar with BMI. It's the body mass index, and it basically says weight you should be for your height. Now, everybody's build is a little differently. Some people are built more slender, some people heavier, some people athletically. Um, it doesn't take into account certain things. For one, I've been working out, powerlifting, bodybuilding for 35 years. And so it doesn't take into account the fact that I have more muscle mass than a sedentary or average person. It can't take that into account because it's only a height and weight chart. Um, I joked with the cardiologist. He said your BMI is 32 or something like that, and I think it's supposed to be 24, 25, somewhere in there. And he says, Steve, you need to get this under control. You're out of control. And I said, I bet you've never seen anybody. I was joking. I said, I bet you've never seen anybody that has a BMI of 32 but has a six-pack of abs. And we kind of laughed, and I'm like, but do you want me to lift my shirt? Because I'll show that to you. And we were joking about it, and then he basically admitted, he goes, you're right. Guys who work out, that does throw everything off. It's not quite the same. So he did have to admit that it does have its limitations. Now, one thing that I have come to understand or believe is that having a higher BMI, whether it's fat or muscle, can still add strain to the body. Let me give you an example. According to the BMI scale, I should probably weigh 150 to 160 pounds. And I weigh probably 190 pounds. Well, I'm strong. I've got decent muscle mass. But one thing that just the extra weight does affect is things like my knees. When I am at a lighter body weight, I do have some troublesome knees, and it is easier to get around. My knees feel better when, I'm 20 pounds lighter rather than 20 pounds heavier. My weight range has gone all over the charts over the years, in between 150 and 220 pounds. And I have decided a few years ago that I was going to stay under 200 pounds all the time, no matter what, because I just felt more sluggish at 200 or over 200 pounds. Even if I was healthy, even if I was strong, even if my muscles were larger, my heart still had to pump harder to do everything, to just move me around, to even just walk around the block. It's going to be more work. And so, and then of course the added strain on the joints, the ankles, the hips, the knees, all of that, regardless of whether that additional weight is muscle or fat, can affect you and can kind of wear things down a little bit prematurely, and certainly can wear you out prematurely as far as just your, if your cardiovascular is not up to par as far as your cardiovascular health, you're just not going to be able to keep up. And that is something that obviously you have to work at no matter what, whether you're heavier because of muscle, heavier because of additional fat, or just sedentary and your cardiovascular system is not good. So cardiovascular health is certainly important. It's challenging for me because I can't, because of my heart condition. So I have what they call, in some circles, they call it athlete's heart. It's an enlarged left ventricle, and it's a common condition in a lot of strength athletes and bodybuilders, powerlifters, some track and field athletes, and so forth. Fairly common. And it's because you're doing strenuous exercise for short periods of time. Now, they don't see that same athlete's heart in, say, a marathon runner. It's a kind of a scenario that only affects more of the more intense, as far as the shorter activity, the strenuous, short-lived activities. Guys from, strongman events and things like that could possibly have the same thing. When the left ventricle gets enlarged, it is not pumping at the same rate as the rest of the heart, and so blood can pool in that quadrant of the heart, and if it doesn't get pumped out at the same rate, it can pool, and if it's pooling there, it can clot. And we believe that that's what happened with my dad with his stroke. He had high blood pressure all the years growing up. As far as I knew, he had been taking blood pressure medication for that. But in the end, age 69, he had a massive stroke. Now, he lived through that just barely, and my mom was amazing, as far as she took care of him for the next 17 years until he passed, which quite the labor of love, no doubt. Anyway, getting back to the heart, the cardiologist thinks that I may have a chance at getting my heart a little healthier, getting it back in shape. But it's difficult when I can't do a lot of the cardiovascular type exercises because I get too winded. And so they end up being short-lived, and I'm out of breath. And so that's frustrating, that you want to do the things that you need to do to make your heart healthy, but you can't really do the things you need to do to make your heart healthy. So it's been a challenge. And so, I try to do what I can. I mean, I'm busy at work most of the day, and I'm moving, so I'm getting some cardio, just kind of running back and forth on a project, but not real serious cardiovascular stuff. I certainly get exercise on the job site, so that keeps me fit. Even if I'm not in the gym for a little while, I stay fit from just being on the job site. Anyway, things are okay. Things are not great. The doctor did see that through my blood work. He says, you've been kind of sloughing off on your diet, haven't you? And I said, yes, I have. And actually, I've been a little bit pudgier the last few months than I should be, than I wanted to be. I'm just like everybody else. Sometimes you get unfocused, and sometimes things get away from you. You get out of the habit, you get out of the routine, and instead of eating salads with chicken at night, which is what I was doing, sometimes it's just, I'm exhausted, and at the end of the day, I want to grab a burger and go home, and it's just easy, and it's not what I needed to do, but it's what happens sometimes. And the blood work doesn't lie. It did affect some of my blood work and my lipid values, and I need to get that back on track. So the last few days, I've been back on salads at night with chicken and an olive oil dressing, and trying to clean that up, drop a few pounds, get my lipid values back in order. And the doctor wants to see me back in 6 months to do another ultrasound of my heart, see how that looks, see if it is the same size, that left ventricle is the same size, if it's shrunk, if it's grown. His hope is that by having the blood pressure under control and having the diet under control, that we can stop the abnormal growth and possibly reverse it to some extent. So we'll see. I'll have to update you in a few months on that when I know more. But that's where we're at. And I just wanted to give you guys a quick update, kind of let you know what's happening in my life. I am just off work, so I am going to go make my salad with chicken and olive oil dressing. Have a great day. Bye-bye.